Importantly, and I feel like this is actually where all the value is in the Vision Pro, they're telling developers to look for key moments that can only be experienced spatially. Hey, it's Chris. When Apple announced the Vision Pro, they said, welcome to the era of spatial computing. And ever since I heard that phrase, I've been wondering, what does that really mean? What's this thing really gonna be like to use? And to figure it out for myself and to help you understand what it means to immerse yourself in spatial computing, I spent some time going through the material Apple provided to developers and designers to help them design experiences for the Vision Pro, and I came away with some really interesting insights, and I cherry-picked a few really cool ones to share with you today to help you wrap your head around this new immersive technology. So let's start with the basics. Windows within the Apple Vision Pro system have a new glass-like design language. So instead of being opaque where you can't really see through, Windows within Vision Pro are gonna be partially see-through to give you more of an awareness of your settings, which makes a lot of sense. This is a completely new operating system, and Apple rethought everything from the ground up, even while retaining some familiarity from macOS and iPadOS. Because Apple Vision Pro sticks digital objects in your physical space, they need to interact. And so this glass-like design language really goes a long way towards facilitating that. Now, when windows pop up, you're also gonna have controls to move them, that's the bar on the bottom, to close them, or to resize them. And what's interesting to note is whenever you do move a window in your Vision Pro workspace, it's always going to be facing you. That's because Apple wants to keep things that you're interacting with inside of Vision Pro to be easy to read, easy to use, easy to interact with. Now, when you're talking about windows within spatial computing, it's mind-blowing to realize that they aren't bound by a screen. So whenever you launch an app on your iPhone or your iPad or your Mac, even when you're using an external display, there's always a screen with boundaries, and your apps are bounded. They're stuck within those boundaries. But with the Vision Pro, those boundaries are gone. They disappear. And so apps are gonna be very flexible. Safari, for instance, is going to be taller so that it can show more website information. But Keynote is gonna be much wider for full presentations. So now your mouth is kind of watering a little bit because you're starting to glimpse how different this is gonna be when you get rid of different limitations that have always existed. And yes, we have new limitations like how heavy the thing is and how long you're gonna wanna wear it, but now you're starting to see why this is such a special device. Now, when you put this headset on for the first time, you're probably not gonna spend a lot of time thinking about why something is placed where it is. You're just gonna sit down and enjoy it. But the reason you can just sit there and relax and enjoy what's in front of you is because somebody sat there and thought about, how can I make this interaction human-centric? What does that mean? Well, by default, windows are placed along a natural line of sight, so just relative to your head or the direction you're facing. But that's gonna be different if you're sitting in a chair or you're standing in front of a desk versus laying back on a couch, for instance. Additionally, and I thought this was so fascinating, it's a best practice for designers to place content just out of arm's reach in your physical space. Why? Well, that's a way to encourage you to interact with the virtual content in your physical space from a distance. Additionally, app designers who are creating great experiences for Vision Pro are going to be anchoring digital content to your face rather than to your view. So that means when you're looking around, it's gonna be really natural. You're not gonna have elements just glued in front of your face so that wherever you turn, they're just stuck there. Instead, when you turn, the elements are gonna stay kind of glued where they're supposed to, in front of your face, not to your face. Partially, that's gonna be down to app developers wanting to create a good stationary experience where you don't have to move around. But what's really fascinating is if you do get up and move, let's say you're at your desk, right? Or you're working on the couch over the coffee table, and that's where your digital elements are sitting, but you get up and you move to a chair over in the corner of the room. When that happens, after you relocate, you can hold down the digital crown and it will recenter the content to accommodate the new surroundings. But then you might be wondering, well, what happens when the digital objects intersect with physical things in the room? Let's say there's a chair in the room and the app or the window or screen that you're looking at in the digital space intersects with that real physical object. Well, when you're moving a window and it hits a physical object, it's gonna remain partially visible until you release it, and then it will kind of fade and dim a little bit more, but you'll still be able to be aware of it. Obviously, there's at least two factors at play here. Number one, safety. Apple doesn't want you to get up and like bump into something or someone. There's that, but also Apple really does want to create an immersive experience where the physical world doesn't just disappear, although you can do that. Let's say you're on the plane and you want to get rid of everybody around you visually, you can do that. Too bad there's not a way to get rid of the smells. But I do think Apple at least envisions this device as being first an augmenter of reality rather than a replacer of your physical reality. Something that's really interesting to think about is the role that depth plays in the Vision Pro experience. So designers are going to be able to use depth to create a visual hierarchy. So when you see big digital elements, those are things you're not meant to interact with, like movies. They're going to appear far away, just something to look at and observe. But controls, on the other hand, things that you're meant to interact with, those are going to take precedence and they're going to appear nice and close. Of course, I can't wait to explore productivity within the Vision Pro. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be an addition to the productivity course. Free update for those of you that have already bought it. So good time to get in while the pricing's still low. Now, as you look at the promo material for the Vision Pro, you don't really think a lot about the size of objects and what that's meant to convey, but Apple issued some guidance for app developers as they're creating these apps that we're all going to dive into. And one of the things that they said was the size of an object really conveys different feelings. So the smaller an object is, the more personal it's going to feel. Whereas the bigger an object is, the less personal and also the more impressive. So you think about a company who's giving us a shopping experience in Vision Pro. They could show a giant shoe, right? And you can see all the details and it's cool, it's impressive. But actually when you're shopping, you want to see that shoe at its actual size, and that's going to be smaller. It feels like something, that you could wear. The key word here with Apple's Vision Pro is immersion. This is what spatial computing is really all about. So check this out. Apps can have different states of immersion. Content can be right in front of you, or it can wrap around you, or it can fully envelop you and immerse you. Or truthfully, if that's a spectrum, something right in front of you or fully wrapped around you, there's a whole gradient of things and experiences that can come in between, like different partial states of immersion. And that really is the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality. You have a digital object placed within your physical space virtually, and you can interact with it. There's shadows and light hitting it, reflections that make it seem like it's really there on the desk in front of you or floating in space right in front of you. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you can be fully transported and feel like you're not in the room that you're in on the virtual side of things. At least visually, you can replace your space. You can be somewhere else. And that's what's both cool and scary. I plan on making a whole different video on whether Apple Vision Pro and similar products are utopian or dystopian, or more likely some combination. And we're gonna explore the good and the bad and the ugly of the new future that's headed for us. I've been seeing the comments. There's a lot that are positive and super excited about this, but there's a lot of people who are like, I'm not here for this. I don't want this. This seems weird. This is not gonna be good for the future. And that statement I just said, where you could feel like you're in a different room than the one you're actually in, well, imagine several people being in the same place, but not being in the same place, really. And we kind of have that with our phones already, but as this technology shrinks and turns into contacts or glasses, in 10, 20, 30 years, whatever, I mean, human interaction is possibly and probably really gonna suffer because of this kind of technology. Audio is gonna play a huge role in your Vision Pro experience. So spatial audio here is gonna be really important. Now, on the consumer side of things, we mostly just sort of experience stuff, right? But when someone's building an experience for Vision Pro, they're gonna be thinking about the sound and whether or not to anchor sounds to an object in your digital space, or whether or not to place sounds all around you. And with spatial audio, they can actually do that, and stuff can sound like it's behind you and in front of you. When somebody talks, it could be talking from where their picture is located. So we're in the very, very, very early stages of the Vision Pro as it's coming online, coming to life. You can't even buy it yet. But what is Apple telling developers who are looking to get their apps into Vision Pro? This is really interesting. Apple's telling them to focus on a unique aspect of their existing app that can be spatial, that can be immersive, and importantly, and I feel like this is actually where all the value is in the Vision Pro, they're telling developers to look for key moments that can only be experienced spatially. I mentioned this in my initial reaction video, but to be able to have new experiences, exclusive experiences, experience things that you couldn't experience on any other device, that is why people are gonna buy the Vision Pro. Not just because it can be better for certain tasks than other devices, but because it's the only device that you're gonna be able to do certain things on. So an early example of what we can expect would be what Apple did with their Photos app. The Photos app is going to be very familiar to anybody who's ever used an iPhone before in terms of just swiping through and looking at pictures, although they'll be bigger, more immersive. But there's one thing that you can do on the Photos app in the Vision Pro that you can't do on any of Apple's other devices, and that is experience panoramas in a whole new way. This is breathing new life into a feature that I think a lot of people probably don't even use anymore. It was really cool when it came out on your iPhone. You could move the camera, keep it steady, and capture a wide area of a landscape, for instance. But then what? To be able to not only stick that in front of your face on a huge scale, be able to turn your head and almost feel like you're there where you took that photo, that's a spatial only experience. So to wrap this up, let's leave things on a mind-blowing note. When people are developing apps and experiences for us in Vision Pro, they have infinite space to deal with. Infinite space. So that means you don't have to have just a little app that sits right in front of you, and you don't have to have an app that's only a sphere around you. You're gonna be able to basically be limited only by a developer's imagination. And for all the Zuckerbergs out there who are like, oh, this is really nothing new, it's the execution here. Apple is delivering on a level that nobody else is. Now, Zuckerberg is like, well, we could have done this, but we just chose not to. Well, Apple chose to do things at a very high level here, and I expect it to be really good. It's called a pro device for a reason, and yes, it has a high price, and yes, I'll be making another video about how Apple could reduce the price so that more people get their hands on this. I've had a lot of people asking about that and a lot of feedback, so get subscribed if you're not already. I'm definitely gonna be doing tons of super deep dives into the Vision Pro because I'm really fascinated by it. Also, I have to ask you a serious question. Why aren't you subscribed to the Daily Tech newsletter yet? It's the best Apple-themed newsletter out there. Gives you just what you want and nothing else. Saves you a ton of time. Comes out every Friday. It's linked up down below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Later.